The information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship with Foyle Legal. For advice tailored to your situation, please consult a qualified legal professional. Welcome to Personal Injury Claims Explained by Foyle Legal, your trusted source for understanding personal injury claims in Western Australia. Each week, we simplify complex legal issues, from motor vehicle accidents to workplace injuries, so you can confidently navigate your rights and claim the compensation you deserve.
Okay, so picture this, right? You're driving along, maybe jamming to some tunes, sun's out, and then bam! You're slamming on the brakes, heart's in your throat.
Oh, yeah.
We've all had those close calls. But what about when it's not such a near miss?
Right.
That's where this deep dive comes in. You sent in this really practical guide, Car Crashes, What to Expect and What to Do, from Foyle Legal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's packed with more than just legal stuff, you know? It's got first aid refreshers, surprising facts about accidents. It's like becoming that person who's totally cool and collected when everyone else is freaking out after a crash, which I love.
Right.
And they get right to it, which I appreciate. Like, the article jumps straight into what to do immediately after an accident. They call them the 4 steps after an accident. And honestly, it's good to refresh, even if driver's ed feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, for sure.
So, step 1, safety first, obviously.
Of course.
Seems like a no-brainer, but in the heat of the moment, you'd be surprised what people forget. They really emphasize moving your vehicle if possible, hazard lights on, making sure you're visible to other drivers, all that good stuff. But from your perspective, what's the thing people tend to miss in that initial scramble?
Well, you'd be amazed how many people completely forget about, the potential for a chain reaction.
Oh, right.
Even if it seems like a minor fender bender, if cars are left blocking lanes, things can escalate so quickly.
Totally.
It can turn into a multi-car pileup in the blink of an eye. It's all about minimizing risk.
It's like that ripple effect, one little tap and then suddenly it's a huge mess.
Exactly.
Okay, on to step 2, information exchange. This one seems pretty straightforward. Swap insurance, maybe phone numbers, and you're good, right?
Well, in theory, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But you'd be surprised how many people, in that moment, they miss crucial details.
Oh, really?
Beyond the basics, they really emphasize things like, full insurance information, not just a name and number, witness contacts. Those can be really important later on, and even photos.
Yeah.
And not just the obvious car damage. Photos of things like, a damaged guardrail, skid marks on the road, even what the weather's like. All of that can be really important for insurance, even if you don't think you're at fault at the time.
It's like building your case file right then and there.
Exactly.
I never would have thought to photograph skid marks.
It all matters.
Okay, step 3. And in the age of smartphones, this one feels almost instinctive, photos.
Absolutely, yeah.
What more is there to say? Everyone's snapping pics anyway.
Well, it does tie directly back to what we were saying about evidence. Clear photos of the accident, the damage, the whole scene. It can be so helpful later on.
A picture's worth 1,000 words, right?
Exactly.
Especially when insurance companies get involved.
For sure.
Which brings us to our final step in their little rapid fire guide here. Reporting the accident. I'm assuming this isn't always an immediate call 911 situation.
No, not at all.
Right.
The article makes a good point of saying that for those more minor accidents, it might not be legally required to file a police report right away.
Okay.
But it's always a good idea.
I see.
Consider it like an insurance policy in itself.
Right.
Because it creates that official record of the event. And if later on there's any kind of dispute about what happened, you've got that documentation.
Right, because even what seems straightforward in the moment, memories get hazy, stories change.
Exactly.
Okay, so 4 steps. Safety first, exchange that information like a pro, snap those photos, and report the accident, especially if you're unsure. Basically, take charge, even when it's the last thing you want to do.
Yeah, be prepared.
Now, they go pretty in-depth on whiplash in here, which makes sense. It's super common, especially with those rear-end collisions. But I want to go beyond fender benders for a sec.
Okay.
What about those times where the impact seems minor, but there's more going on beneath the surface? They mentioned some pretty serious stuff like brain injury, PTSD, and CRPS.
Right.
And those don't exactly scream car accident, at least not at first.
Yeah.
Can you break those down a bit?
It's interesting because our bodies are complicated. And what might feel like a minor bump can actually have some pretty long-term effects.
Mm-hmm.
like brain injuries, for example.
Yeah.
You don't always need a head-on collision or anything like that.
Right.
Even that sudden whiplash motion can cause, the brain to actually hit the inside of the skull.
Wow.
Think of it like an egg yolk sloshing around in the shell.
Oh, okay.
It's not the most pleasant image,
No.
but, it kind of gets the point across because even impacts that seem minor can lead to concussions or worse.
So even if you don't see stars after a fender bender, there could be something more serious happening.
Exactly. And then you've got things like PTSD, which people often associate with, combat or some kind of major trauma.
Right.
But car accidents, even ones that seem relatively minor, they can be incredibly jarring and really upsetting.
Yeah.
And that shock, that fear, the suddenness of it all, it can actually trigger PTSD symptoms like, flashbacks, anxiety, trouble sleeping.
It's like your body remembers, even if your mind's trying to forget.
Yeah, absolutely. It can have a real impact.
Wow.
And then there's CRPS, which is complex regional pain syndrome, I think is the full name.
Okay.
Kind of a mouthful, but it's basically a chronic pain condition that can happen after any kind of injury. And it often affects like a limb.
Okay.
Imagine this constant, burning, throbbing pain that just doesn't match the injury.
Oh, wow.
That's CRPS.
Uh-huh.
And it's one of those things that's often misunderstood and misdiagnosed.
So it sounds like even if you think it's nothing, it's always better to get checked out by a doctor just to be safe, especially after an accident.
Absolutely, 100%. And this actually ties back to the legal advice in the article, too.
Oh, so.
Getting checked out, even if you think you're fine, it creates that medical record.
Right.
And that record can be really crucial later on if you need to, file any kind of claim or anything like that. It protects you.
Right. Because sometimes those symptoms don't show up until later.
Exactly.
By then, it's harder to prove anything.
Yeah, you want that documentation early on for your own health and for any legal stuff.
Smart.
So important.
So we've covered what to do right after the accident and talked about those injuries that aren't always obvious. But now I kind of want to talk about the accidents themselves. The article has this really interesting breakdown of accident types and causes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, did you know that in Western Australia, the most common type of accident is a rear-end collision?
It makes sense when you think about it.
It does, right.
Yeah.
People stopping short, tailgating, not paying attention. It's like a recipe for disaster.
And what's interesting is that while those rear-end collisions are often seen as, not that bad, the forces involved, especially at higher speeds, can be really significant.
Oh, yeah.
And that can lead to those whiplash injuries we were just talking about, and of course, other complications as well.
It's not just about the initial impact, but how it affects your body.
Exactly.
And then the article also mentions sideswipe collisions, those ones that happen when you're driving alongside another car. Like on a highway, those are always a mess. And then side impact collisions, those T-bone situations often happen in intersections.
Yeah, and those can be really dangerous.
Yeah.
Because, the impact's happening at a much more vulnerable point on the vehicle. So it can lead to more severe injuries for the people inside.
Right.
Plus, legally speaking, figuring out who's at fault in those situations is tricky.
Oh, bet.
It's the whole thing about right-of-way, visibility, speed, all these factors.
So even if you have the right-of-way, it doesn't mean the other person's paying attention.
That's a good point. You're never totally in control, unfortunately.
Exactly. Speaking of things we can't control, the article goes beyond the usual suspects, speeding, drunk driving.
Yeah.
And they really focus on fatigue and distractions. I feel like those are the silent killers on the road.
I agree. They're so dangerous.
It's so easy to think, oh, it's just a quick glance at my phone, or I'm only a little tired. But those micro moments of inattention can have massive consequences.
Absolutely.
No.
In fact, studies have shown that driving while fatigued can be just as dangerous as driving under the influence of alcohol.
Wow, that's crazy.
And when you combine fatigue with distractions like mobile phones, the risk of an accident increases exponentially.
It's like our brains go on autopilot, but the road doesn't care about autopilot, does it?
It's a recipe for disaster. And the scary part is these are often preventable accidents.
Which brings me to a point the article made that really resonated with me. It's not just about changing our own behavior behind the wheel, though that's obviously crucial. But it's also about being aware of those common causes of accidents and becoming more defensive drivers as a result. Almost like we're anticipating that the person in the next lane might be overtired or distracted.
Precisely. It's about being proactive rather than reactive.
Mm-hmm.
By understanding those common risk factors, we can adjust our driving habits accordingly, increasing our following distance, being extra cautious at intersections, avoiding late night drives when we're tired. We can't control what other drivers do, but we can control how we respond to potential hazards.
It's like that saying, drive defensively, assume everyone else on the road is crazy.
Okay, maybe not crazy, but you get the point.
Being aware of those common causes can turn us into more alert and ultimately safer drivers.
That's a great point.
So, to wrap up this deep dive into the world of car crashes, we've covered the immediate steps to take after an accident, those less obvious injuries to be aware of, and those sneaky accident causes that go beyond the usual suspects. It's been a bit of a wild ride, but hopefully eye-opening.
Knowledge is power, even and perhaps especially when it comes to something as unexpected as a car accident. Being prepared can truly make all the difference.
Absolutely. And this whole deep dive got me thinking.
What's that?
What if we took that same energy, that same preparation we bring to dealing with an accident and channeled it into preventing those accidents from happening in the first place? It's a thought to ponder next time you're behind the wheel. Until next time, drive safe out there.
Thank you for listening to Personal Injury Claims Explained by Foyle Legal. We hope this episode helped clarify your rights and next steps in your injury claim. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and visit foylelegal.com for more useful information. See you next time.